guys, and welcome to the last session of Stretch and Strengthen, where today we'll be going through some exercises for our knees and our hips. So this is one of my favourite sessions because I love working through the hips and the knees because they're sometimes the areas that, as well as the back. But today I think we'll just start with a few warm-up exercises, and if you noticed a change in scenery, it's because there were no meeting rooms available at work, so I thought try something different and do it at the home. And quite bright, I've got my favourite little plant here, so that's Monstera plant if you're wondering. So we'll start off with just a few warm-up exercises. So as usual, we're going to start with some movement stretches just to get the blood flow and everything going for us, so that when we do the exercise, we're not going to be at risk of injury. To start off, make sure you're near a wall, and we're just going to do a few gentle leg swings. I'll make sure I don't hit my plant there. So these leg swings are just to get the hamstrings and the quads and the hip flexors nice and warm and going through their range of motion. Probably notice I'm not going very high. If you're able to go a bit higher, that's great, but I don't want to go too hard at the start. You just want to kind of warm into it. So just moving back and forth. You should probably feel it through the hamstrings. Make sure your legs straight as you're swinging up. And change sides when that feels pretty good. We'll go over to the other side. And so these are particularly good for the hamstrings. As you can see, as each swing goes up, you can see it getting higher and higher. The idea makes the hamstrings lengthen out a bit more, which is really good for the knees. And then we're going to come off facing forward. You might want a piece of wall just nearby so that you don't lose your balance, because we're just going to do a few opening the doors with our hips. So we're going to lift our knee up to 90 degrees, and we're just going to open the door with our leg. We're going to change side each time. This is a really good exercise to do, to just open up through those hip flexors and those groin muscles. Probably see a lot of football players doing this just to get some movement through their hips for their kicking styles. Notice how my knee is at 90 degrees the whole way around. I'm not just kind of swinging my leg around. We're keeping it very controlled if you can. And of course, having that wall or chair nearby to help with balance can also help. And then finally, we're just going to place the feet together, knees together, and very gently, with our hands on our knees, we're just going to do a few gentle circles. Starting slow and small with the circles. This is a good one just to get some movement through the knees. Go in one direction, and as you feel comfortable, you can start to increase that circle and get a bit bigger. Make sure you keep the knees together. I feel a few crunches in there, hopefully not. If it is really painful doing this, make sure you're not doing it, like just take a break during this little part, and then we'll go off to the other side. Going the other direction. And relax. So hopefully our legs are feeling pretty warm now. So if you got my email, you would know that we just need a chair for today's session. So we're just going to start on the chair to begin with. And I've got a little heat pack. Now you don't need a heat pack, but I thought it would be good to kind of add in some weight to today's exercise, because the first one is just a simple leg extension, which is lifting up that leg and straightening through the knee. I bought the heat pack because I can place that on my foot, and it should hopefully hold its spot there. And that just adds a little bit of weight to the exercise, and it's a nice and easy weight. I'd imagine if you've ever had any kind of tight muscles, you would definitely have a heat pack in your home. So I thought it was a nice, easy one to implement. But essentially, this exercise is going to be working through our quad muscles. So it's called a leg extension, and what it is we're straightening up through the knee, tightening up through those quads on the top of the leg in order to help build the strength there. Obviously, the more you do it, the heavier the weight, the more you're going to build there. But at the start, these muscles can sometimes get quite weak, which is why we just do it with little to no weight. My heat pack is hanging in there. So I'd recommend to probably do about 12 to 15 of these, or until it starts to feel a bit fatigued. You might even be by 10, but if you can't do more than 10, that's okay, but try and, if you can, get more than 10, or aim to eventually. And making sure that we're also keeping our feet not pointed, so the opposite, the other way. We're trying to flex our feet. And another way you can do this is by having a little resistance band at the ankle and have it strapped to the back of the chair, so that way you're using the resistance band or TheraBand as a way of increasing the weight. And then we'll do the other side. So we're only going to do about 1 set per exercise this time, just so that we can go through quite a few of them that are going to be good for your hips and your knees. So again, just about 12 to 15 of these exercises if you can. And notice my foot isn't pointed. I'm also trying to be conscious through my hips. I'm not just kind of sitting here relaxing, lifting up my leg. I'm sitting quite upright. I've got my hips both parallel to each other. I don't have this leg just kind of off one side. And I'm trying to focus on keeping the knees as well quite level with each other. So I've not got kind of this knee going down as I lift. I'm trying to keep it all synchronized. Mirror image. So once this leg starts to feel a bit warm, you might have done 12, you might have done 15, you might have done 10. Once it starts to feel fatigued, that means you've worked the muscle and you can have a break. So we can place the heat pack away now. We don't need that one anymore. Moving on now to our next exercise. Now remember, we're only doing 1 set today, but it is good to try and do more sets if you can. I always like to mix up the exercise, so I might do a bit of that and then a bit of this next one and then go back to the same exercise at the start. But it's up to yourself, however you're feeling. Now the next one is a nice simple one that we all pretty much do every day anyway, but I thought it'd be good to start off with. So if anyone's ever heard of a squat, they're quite daunting if you've never done them before. Getting down and squatting in that position can be quite hard if you haven't got the right technique. So that's why I like to start with a chair. So the chair actually helps to reinforce that good technique. So what I want you to do is just sit to the end of the chair, so you've got a bit of space between your back and the backrest. I want you to place your knees at 90 degrees where you're sitting on that chair. So if you can see me, I'm not kind of feet close to the chair, I've got my knees at 90 degrees. And what we're going to do is just stand up, nice and simple. And when you're standing up, I want you to focus on placing all the weight through the back of your feet, so your heels. You're not going to go forward onto your toes. So nice and easy, stand up. That is essentially a squat. And then going back down, be careful with this, but very slowly, back down, until you find that chair again. You might need to have your hands behind your back just to feel for that chair to start off with, or you might want to kind of place yourself a bit closer to the chair so that you're not risking maybe falling, but otherwise we're just going to do that again. Stand up and sit down. Now as you notice, when you sit down, we're not kind of throwing ourselves back. We're placing our backs into an arched position so that we can sit down nice and easy. If we were to just fall back into the chair, that's not a really good technique. So it's about focusing on that control, sitting and standing without having to use any momentum. So with squats it can vary, you can do up to maybe 15 without weight. You can also make it a little bit harder, and we could bring that heat pack back and chuck it on and just hold on to it as extra weight. But it's up to yourself. I would recommend doing, if you've got no weight, maybe 10 to 15 squats, depending on, of course, how your knees are, how your hips are. If it starts to hurt, after 10, or burn, that's enough. You can always come back to it. It's all about progression. Once you've done about 10 to 15 of these, you can have a rest. And we'll place that chair away, just for now. The next exercise I've got on my little program there It's similar to those, but it's going to be working a little different part of the glute muscle. So that exercise is working our glutes in our legs. The glutes are a good one to work for increased back strength, but also to help your hips. So by having stronger glutes, we're helping the pelvis align quite nicely, which helps to reduce the tension that's being flexors, which can get quite tight. So now this next exercise is called a sumo squat. So what I'm going to get you to do is place your feet a little bit wider than you normally would for any squat. I want you to place your toes pointing outwards. Not sure if you can see my toes. Oh, there you go. So toes pointed outwards, about just past hip distance apart. And this time we're going to squat again. Pretend the chair is there, but we're not going to go as low. And we're going to make our knees go outwards a bit more. So you see how I'm not going that low. We're starting off nice and slow, not pushing it too hard. And this is a sumo squat. It's going to be working those hamstrings and those glutes more in the medial part of the leg. And once you get comfortable with this, you can still have the chair behind you if you feel comfortable, or chair in front so you've got something. But once you feel more comfortable, you can start to go a little bit lower with this exercise. Making sure you take big deep breaths. Of course, talking while doing this and getting out of breath. So about, again, 10 to 15 of these, depending on where you're at. If it's 10, probably more on the beginner's side. Once you get a bit better at it, you can start going a few more. It's up to you where you're at though. Now, I don't know if you can notice, but my knees, I'm locking them. So that's a no-no. If you can, when you stand up, don't go all the way to lock. Try and go to just slightly bent. I'm a bit naughty for doing that. So make sure you're not locking your knees when you stand up. Keeping that kind of muscle activity in there. And you notice I have my hands in front of my chest. That's because that helps me keep my body upright. So when we're squatting, we're trying to keep our backs upright. So I'll do it on the side. But as you can see, my back is quite straight doing this. It's when we start to bend over and squat. A bit exaggerated there. That's not great technique, and that's what we want to try and stamp out. So by trying to keep your back up straight, you're allowing all your body to work as it should without putting extra strain on muscles that shouldn't get strain. Good. And have a rest there. And you notice I like to jiggle around because that jiggling just helps to get the blood flow going into the joints, helping them relax and helping their muscles secrete their lactic acid, which can sometimes build up and cause a bit of pain. Now, I've just got the chair next to me here. The chair can help for this one, but if you're comfortable doing it without, also do that. But we're just going to do a few calf raises. So calf raises are going to work the calf muscles now, which help with the knee support. So we talked about at the start of this program the importance of building strength in the knees, in the joints, the hips, the back, because that strength and that support that the muscles give the joints are going to be the biggest chance you have at reducing the risk of injury, say if you do have to take a bit of a hard fall or have to run, that kind of thing. So calf muscles are another good one, and these are really easy to do. And doing these in between squats or bigger leg exercises because they're a good time filler and you still get that little bit extra in your workout. So feet are going to be hip distance apart. You can have the chair there just for support if you need. We're just simply going to go up onto our toes and down. Hopefully you can see me in the video there. So it's just up and down. And you can go as slow or as fast as you want with these. There's no real kind of control here. It's going to be working the calves regardless. But for the best benefits, I would recommend to hold at the top, count for about 2 seconds, and then release. That can just increase the fatigue on the muscles that little bit more. You probably find that, it doesn't take many of these to start feeling a bit fatigued, especially if you're holding. These muscles are quite small, and I don't know if you can notice that I have almost no calf muscles, so mine are burning. Another way you can do this exercise is, again, sitting down, like we had before. So standing and straightening through the knees is a little bit hard, and you you want another way of doing the exercise without causing that little bit of discomfort, you can place yourself on a chair sitting down. You can probably bring your heat pack back over as just a little bit of extra weight. And you can just place that on the knee and do little calf raises itself. Now, if you've got kids or you've got a baby, you can also have the baby there and just lift the baby up and down. That acts as a weight in itself. So for those that have had babies, I've had my brothers on my knee before and given them a little ride. That was funny. But anything works with this one. You can hold it and it works just as fine. That's another good way to work the calves as well, and you can do both sides. But that wasn't in my program, that was just something extra I thought I'd add in. Now, moving along to the next exercise. In my program, you're probably looking at it and it looks a little bit difficult. That's because there's no real good picture for this exercise. So what I like to call it is a single leg sit down. And what it is it's working one leg at a time, and it looks like it is pretty difficult, but it's not. So what I want you to do now is pick the leg you want to start off with, have the chair kind of right behind you, and make sure you feel around for the first time. And we're just going to sit down, lifting one leg off the ground onto the chair. And then placing that other leg down, standing up with two. Lifting up, just hovering that other leg. I've got my right leg as doing all the work. Sitting down, and then standing up with two. Now with this exercise, it's working on that concentric movement again, which is what we talked about in the last session, where that concentric movement is the one that does the most work and you have the most potential strength. So that's why I like to do this exercise for the knees, because it's a really good one to help build stability. You're probably finding if sitting down is just a bit too difficult, you might want to get some booster for the chair so that you don't have to sit down so low. As you can see, I'm struggling. Or if it does help as well, you can have this other leg that's just hovering there. You can have it slightly touching the floor, just providing that little bit of extra support to the exercise. And then on the other end of the spectrum, if you're finding that this is pretty easy, try stand up with the one leg. As you can see, it's not as easy. Change legs if you've done about 10 to 12 of these. So again, with this exercise, we want to try and emphasize the control when you're going down. I don't want you to just throw yourself back into the chair. And make sure, again, you're putting all the weight through your heel. The heels are the ones that we want to be taking most of the load, because they reinforce the muscles in the back of the leg to do most of the work rather than the front. All this talking is getting me out of breath. A couple more of these. So again, in this exercise, we're working mainly the glutes. We're also doing a bit of the hamstrings as well. So these muscles are really good to help with the hips and that stability through the hips, as well as keeping the pelvis in a nice rotation so that it's not forward rotated or back rotated, which can sometimes lead to hip pain or back pain as well. But obviously it depends on your body and everyone's different. So you might already have quite strong glutes and hammies, and you might need to actually work on the hip flexors. That's why this class just gives you an idea on different things you can do, but it's not specific, so keep that in mind. All right, standing up, we're just going to move the chair out of the way. We're on our last two exercises for today, and then we'll do some lovely stretches. So the next one is called a lunge. I'll go on my side for this one, but essentially we're going to be working through the glutes, the hip flexors, the hammies, and the quads. So it's quite a dynamic exercise. What we're going to do is place our feet forward, and we're going to choose one leg to start off with, and we're going to reach it back about a couple, like 2 ruler lengths, and we're just going to plant the 2 feet, drop the back knee as low as you feel comfortable, and then back up and meet the feet at the front again. And then we'll do the other side. Find that comfortable position, drop that back knee, it doesn't have to be low, and meet the feet back again. So these are step back lunges, and I feel like, in my opinion, they are the easier of lunges. you have the other lunges where you're walking forward. And I just find balance and everything a little bit harder than these. So I thought we'd start with these as they're good ones to begin with. Now you notice my knee's not going all the way to the floor. If you're up for an extra challenge, you can place that leg back and go all the way to the floor. But you probably find that's a little bit harder, so I'll let you choose where you want to go. And I would say about 10 lunges each leg is a good amount. It's kind of up to you again, how you're feeling, how your joints are feeling. If you feel like you can go a bit more and they're not as fatigued as they usually are, that's great. That means you can progress. And we all know the more you progress, the more you can do. Well, more progress you'll see. I'll just do this one more. I don't think it is 10 each side, but that's pretty much some good exercises that are good for your hips, good for your knees, and as you can see, they'll get your heart rate pumping as well, some of them. So now we'll go into a few stretches. So as we know, stretches are a great way to help with any kind of injury or pain. And especially for the hips and the knees, these are kind of the areas that are some of the harder ones to stretch, but the most rewarding if you do. So I'm going to flip onto my back now, and I might even take my shoes off for this one. So if you've got some shoes on, it might be good to take them off just so you can have a little bit of extra flexibility. We're going to start on our backs in Happy Baby. So in Happy Baby, you can start with just an easy version where you just hold on to your legs. And you just kind of let your hips just relax and flow down. Make sure you can see me. So in this position, if you're comfortable, this is a yoga position by the way, it does look quite funny, but it's called Happy Baby for a reason. If you're feeling comfortable and you're able to, you can start to bring your hands to your feet. If you're able to get your feet, then that's great. If your feet are together, that's fine. Just kind of feel around for the stretch. And then if you've got pretty good flexibility, you could probably start to move your feet upwards. And this just makes the stretch a little bit more intense through those hips itself. And you might also feel it through your lower back. In this position, just kind of see how you go. You might want to bring your feet down a little bit just to get some movement through the knees as well. Please, if you do have any pain doing this exercise, make sure you just sit out for this little bit. But if you have no injuries in your hips and knees, then this is a really good one to just get some stretch through those tight muscles. And as you can see, mine are quite fat. And then we'll flip over onto our side. So on our side, we're just going to do a quick stretch for our quads. I've got a few stretches for our quads today, but I just wanted to start with this one because it's nice and easy. If you've ever done the standing up version of this, it is quite hard to be balanced and get your foot all the way up there. This is a good one to start off with. So on your side, you want to pick that ankle to your hand. If that's a bit too much for you, you can grab a towel and put it around and just pull the towel. But otherwise, holding onto that ankle and try and keep your knees together if you can. This is a good one for these front of leg muscles that can be quite tight sometimes if you sit down for a lot of the day or maybe just have a bit of tightness there, which sports players usually do as well. I've got a towel for this mat. Lovely rug I bought, and it molts everywhere. And we'll switch over to the other side once you've been holding it for 30 seconds. Ooh, as you can see there, I'm going to have to get a lint roller now. Just holding that ankle, knee to each other. If you're really tight with these muscles, you know about it. Otherwise, just keep holding. Remember, it's good to hold for 30 seconds each stretch. This 30 seconds gives it the length of time it needs for it to actually release the muscle. Any less than that, it's almost not worth doing the stretch. So Word of advice, 30 seconds. Take some deep breaths while I do this stretching session. It will help to release the muscles a little bit more. And we'll sit up. So in a sitting position now, we're just going to do a few hammy stretches. So one leg out straight, other leg, if you can, bend it in so that the foot is just going to bend forward and try and touch our toes. Keeping in mind, this leg should be very straight and the toe should not be. And if you can, even better, try and have your back up straight as you bend. That way you'll feel it a little bit more. You won't be able to get down as far. And if you can reach your toes, maybe just give them a little pull towards you. You might feel a little bit more intense stretch there, but it's all good. And once you've held that for 30 seconds, we'll change over to the other leg. So again, straight leg, toes towards your body, your face. And if you can touch your toes, that's great. If you can though, try and keep your back up straight as you bend forward, as that will just increase the stretch. So imagine you're arching your back, which doesn't look like it now, but I am trying, and oh, it increases that stretch so much more than just kind of rolled over. Few deep breaths. Again, make sure you hold this for 30 seconds. If you need to pause the video, that's okay. I'm going to try and get through quite a few stretches if we can. Next one we're going to do is we're going to come up onto fronts. If you can, place the knee on the ground. If it's easier, have a cushion underneath. Otherwise, if this is just a no-no and you're not kind of able to put any weight on that knee, you can do it in a standing position. But essentially, it is the same thing as with your knee on the ground. We're just going to place one knee at the back or foot, one up forward, and placing both hands on that front knee, we're just going to push our hips towards that front ankle. You should feel this stretch right through the hip flexors. So these are the ones that tend to get quite tight if you've been sitting down all day, or if you sit and do a lot of driving, that kind of thing. And with this one, it's good to kind of try and push your pelvis towards that front foot as well. So we're not just kind of doing this loosely, we're actually actively pushing our pelvis forward while we try and stretch that back leg back. And if you can even more, get a bit more space between the leg and the foot. You to grow more legs, little boy. And then if you're able to, which I don't think I will be, you can pick up your foot from behind. So I'm not going to try that because it is a bit difficult, but if you are able, you can bring that foot up to your hand and just stretch that quad even more, which is it's in a picture on my program as well. And then another way to stretch the quads, which is quite effective and it would be good if you can't get the foot up like I couldn't, is to place yourself on the ground, sitting down. Have your kind of legs at 90 degrees each. I wonder if you can see on the video there. I might just go onto the side. And this is going to stretch that same leg we were trying to before if you could pick up your foot. But if you couldn't, this is another good one to do. So just leaning back very gently. Try not to go too quick with this. You should feel that stretch all the way through that front quad. You can see my foot here is just off to the side.
This is quite a strenuous stretch, I would call it, so please, if this hurts, don't do it. But if you are able to, this is a great one just to relieve some tension. And if you are up on your elbows like I am, if you're feeling pretty confident, you can try and go down onto your back and lay there and hold the stretch. But for me, being as inflexible as I am, this is where I'm going to go and stay. Cool. And if you've held that for 30 seconds, like we all have, I'm guessing, we're just going to do the next stretch. So coming forward, same kind of position, but this time we're going to be stretching that front leg rather than the other leg. We're going to place this front knee in front of our chest, and we're just going to lean forward, stretching through our glutes. And this back leg can stay bent, or if you're able to, straighten it out through the back. This is a great stretch for the glutes, and if you've got tight glutes, you will very much know about it within this stretch. I've got my knee kind of centered to my chest, so keep that in mind if you can. And keep that knee on top, like right underneath your chest in the middle. And my bottom is still on the ground, by the way. Other stretch variations for this one, you can bring your kind of body over to the middle, but I've just kept it down because that stretch is enough for me. Again, holding for about 30 seconds, and then you can change sides. What we'll do now is we'll go back to the other leg in that forward stretching motion. This is for the hip flexors. Go on the other side so that you can see me. That knee again, if you need a cushion underneath. Oh, I'm covered. So again, pushing that pelvis forward through the hips, keeping those hips going down towards the ankle, and trying to arch that back. Oppositely arch that back for this stretch. And then if you're able to grab your ankle, you can grab it now. Otherwise, we'll do a variation, which is for me particularly. We're going to place our knees both at about 90 degrees. We're just going to lean back so that we feel that stretch through our quads. You need to try and grab your feet, pull it a bit closer to your body. You might feel the stretch a little bit more. Have mine out and up. It's all about how you feel and where you're at. Stretch. And coming back up, going to that front leg now, which is what we were working on before on the front leg. We're just going to do another glute stretch for this side, and then we'll go into a few final stretches to finish off. Remember, chest is centered with that knee. That back leg can go straight if that's comfortable for you. Otherwise, just keep it bent slightly. That's also fine. A few deep breaths doing this stretch. This is another good stretch to do if you've got a bit of lower back pain. So we did that in the first session. Sometimes our glutes can get a bit tight. They can cause you a bit of pain. And relaxing. Okay. Now, they were all of them, right? Yeah, we did the hip flexors, the quads, and the glutes. Now we're just going to do another one for the groin. So haven't done a groin stretch yet.
This is a bit of a strange one, but the groin is one of those areas that do need to be stretched because it can pull quite tight on those pelvis and hip joints. So what we're going to do is just place our knees as far apart as you feel comfortable, and we're just going to let kind of gravity, and hopefully you've got some like little friction in the floor that your knees can start to move apart. I'm just going to come down onto the elbows and just kind of let the hips fall and let them feel that stretch. So make sure your hips and your knees and everything is all in line. You don't have kind of a child's pose position going on. You've got your hips up quite high. You can see me there. And just kind of let the hips relax and let the groin muscles just come nice and loose and help reduce that tension. If you've got tiles, this is good. Carpet, maybe not so much. But if you can consciously kind of just let your knees go a little bit farther apart just to help out with the stretch. And then another good one to do for the groin as well, which I'm actually quite lucky where I am right now. I've got a wall right behind me. If you're right near a wall, place yourself kind of off to the side of that wall. This is just to get started. And what we're going to do is kind of place our hips right up to the wall. And you're just going to lay down, placing the feet up against the wall. Now, it feels a bit funny, but again, the hips are a weird one to stretch. They look a bit funny sometimes. And we're just going to let gravity again take our legs down, and you should feel that stretch right through these inner thigh muscles. So these inner thigh muscles, or we call them adductors, sometimes when they get a bit tight, they can pull on those knee joints. And those knee joints might get a bit like flared up. They might pull the kneecap. If you've ever heard of patella tracking, that can sometimes be from the inner thigh muscles, but can also sometimes be from the outer ones, which we'll stretch next. But this is a really great stretch because gravity really plays a part in this one. And it helps to pull the legs down. Hopefully not too much. If you've got kind of like a real intense pain there, it might be good to just bring your feet up a bit so that it's not so painful. But otherwise, just let gravity do its thing. And again, 30 seconds. If you can hold it for a bit longer than 30, that is better. Keep holding. A few deep breaths. It helps having a wall right where you are as well. And gently bringing your feet back to center. And we're just going to stand up for this last one. They might feel a bit tender now after they get all stretched out. So I talked about the middle of the legs. They can sometimes get a bit tight and pull the patellas in that way. But then sometimes these outer muscles, or we call it a tensor fasciae latae, it's a tendon and a muscle that runs all the way down the side of your leg. If you've ever used a foam roller on that area, you would know about it because that is probably one of the most painful areas you could do. A good way to stretch it is to place your feet opposite, like crisscross. So I've got my right foot on the other side of my left foot. And we're just going to use the wall to kind of bend away from. So we're trying to stretch through this side of the body. So the wall is there just for kind of support. I'm doing this wrong. The other way. So, yes. Sorry. I was like, this doesn't feel right. So I'm doing it the wrong way. You want your leg that's closest to the wall on the other side of the other foot. So I've got my left leg, which is closest to the wall, on the right side of my right foot. And that way we can lean into the wall and you should feel that stretch probably through the side of the back, but also if this muscle on the side of the hip is tight, you should also feel it there. So we're pushing the hips essentially towards that wall now. And we'll change sides. You probably find that if your hips aren't
or the TFL on the side, if it's not that tight, you might not feel much in this exercise, but still give it a go. And as well, I've got my foot pointed towards the camera. That's another stretch if you do have a bit of flexibility there. So as you can see, our leg doesn't bend this way, which is why it's hard to stretch this muscle, which is also why it gets so tight. So it's good to try and do this every now and again, especially if you do have a bit of patella tracking towards that side. And if you've got a foam roller, that's even better. Try and get the foam roller in there because that can help to release the muscle itself and actually get some massage and self-massage in there. Cool. You've held that for 30 seconds. That will conclude today's session. So thanks everyone for coming for so long and watching the videos. It's been 4 or 5 weeks because we had 1 week in the middle as a break. But I've enjoyed it myself. I've gotten a lot out of it and got those kind of stretching techniques kind of refreshed in my memory. But keep an eye out. I might do a few more sessions later down the track, but I hope you all enjoy it.